Today I wanted to see how much it would actually cost to actually piece together a computer, a nice budget computer as it were, and see how much it would cost to have a nice complete system all in one. So it's not going to be the fastest, and might in some cases be the slowest here and there, but the idea is somebody that just, you know, just got out of high school, got their first job, wants to get in, or just doesn't have a computer and needs one right now, wants to get all these bits here and go. A good starting point, as you would. And we're going to start off with an AMD build, but I will also have an Intel counterpart, and I'll have Intel. No, I'll have an Intel counterpart, and I'll have a NVIDIA counterpart to such a pieces. So, as it were, let's start off. First, as we have the motherboard. I have used this motherboard in the past. It is actually a really good motherboard. Um, I have overclocked an FX 8320 on it with very little issues. It has a really nice, large heat sink on it. The power phase is a 6 plus 2 plus 2. So it is not an 8 plus 2, but that is more than enough. If I'm not mistaken, it can actually handle the larger 140 TDP processors, so that is good. So, yep. So this is a great motherboard to start with. It has all the stuff you would actually want. The PCI Express length is a little bit dated, is 2.0, but as to be expected on an older socket, has USB 3.0, which is what I care most about on some of these budget boards, if they actually have that. But it has really everything you want. I looked at lower price boards and found that lower price boards, they really just, they're lacking some of those pieces. They're lacking some of those basic pieces for, because AMD, I like AMD. I use AMD for many years, but the problem is they use so much power, and I have to worry about the MOSFETs and the power delivery because it gets so hot, especially with those 6 core and 8 cores. If you want to, you can knock down to a lesser board, if you want to use a quad core. But with this build, I want to go with the 6 core. And speaking of which, here we go. We have the AMD FX 6300. Now, I have never actually used this processor. I have used the FX 4300. I have used the FX 8320. Both do good jobs for what they're made to do. But I have, in the past, I have used a Phenom 1090, which is the Phenom 6 core. Now, there's a little bit of difference there, but both being 6 cores, I can say that a 6 core is kind of that. I don't really see a reason to go to an 8 core if the 6 core is going to fulfill your needs, and that kind of mindset. And it does use less power. It's not going to get quite so hot. It's not going to be quite so hard on the MOSFETs on the system. So it's kind of a nice middle ground compromise for what it is. And it's only like $100. I mean, when AMD first came out with 6 cores, they were like 200 something dollars. Now it's only like $100. And this thing uses about the same amount of power as the old Phenom quad core, so it's fine. You know, you're not going to get the kind of performance you would get from like an i5, but you are getting more cores. And the reason I went with this original build instead of building originally for an i5 first is because for utility purposes, I find it's better to have more cores, even if they're slower cores. because this isn't necessarily going to be strictly a gaming computer. It's going to be a gaming computer. It's going to be someone that wants to start off streaming. It's going to be like a multimedia computer, a computer for families, a computer that someone wants to like, for somebody that really just social medias and like shops online and just does that kind of basic stuff. This computer is kind of like for that. You know what I mean? It's an all-rounder, you know. Later on, we'll go over if you really want a gaming computer, what you could do to maximize that. Um, and then moving on to RAM, we have the Ballistic Sport 8 GB 2x4. I've never used Crucial, but I have never heard anything bad about them. 8 gigs, I think, is pretty much taking the place of what 4 gigs used to be when I started getting into building my own computer all those years ago. But, I mean, $45 for 8 gigs. DDR4 is about the same price for the starter level or lower level, anyway, starter level, whatever. But, yeah, it's RAM, it's going to work. It's not the slowest, and it's not the fastest. So, 8 gigs, yeah, 8 gigs is going to work pretty well, except for the more extreme cases. So, yeah, memory, woohoo! Graphic cards, I'm gonna be dead honest. I'm gonna be a little bit out there. I love my Sapphire cards. um, if I'm gonna buy an AMD card, I usually would like to go Sapphire. If I'm gonna buy a NVIDIA card, I'd rather go EVGA. That's just gonna be straight out there. For quality reasons. I sometimes go other ways, but that's usually what I look at first. So here we got Sapphire, and this is actually the more reasonably priced option to boot. And I can tell you that the Sapphire cards this time around, I have looked inside of them. I've looked at reviews for the inside of them. They're actually made very well. They have their own like hybrid capacitors and MOSFETs and everything, and they're good. They're solid. They're a little bit different, but they're solid. They're not going to blow up on you. They're fairly reliable. We got the RX 460. This is going to be a basic 1080p card. As this is a starter-based computer. You could go lower with cheaper cards, but I also wanted to make sure that you had DirectX 12 compatibility. That we have that. And some older cards is questionable. So yeah, DirectX 12 hasn't been around as long as anywhere near as long as DirectX 11. That's for damn sure. It's only been like a year or two, so you kind of have to roll with it. The older cards are actually getting more expensive, as I saw. So these newer cards, this is kind of like, you could go lower with a 2 gig, and you might be okay with that. I feel more comfortable having at least 4. So any higher than 4 for an 1080 is kind of, unless you're modding, you're not really going to benefit too much at 1080p with more than 4. Even 4 is kind of pushing a little bit. So this should be fine for 1080p, just fine. If you have any frame issues, just like lower some of the filters, lower the shadows just a little bit, and you'll skyrocket up in frames, probably. I've done that before with lower gear before, and it's fine. So this is a good card. I haven't heard anything bad about it. It uses about, I think under load, Tom's Hardware says it about 109 watts. So not very power hungry compared to Radeon's past cards. So good card. Well, speaking of power, let's go and take a look at the power supply. We have an EVGA power supply. Now, I've always been leery with Superflower power supplies, but like back in the day, they had kind of a hit and miss. They were kind of based on releases and power supplies per unit. They weren't really like, this is a good manufacturer. And so now Superflower is like the one that everybody talks about when you talk about who makes EVGA power supplies. Now there's a couple of different ones, but that's the main one. Now they are a well-known manufacturer. They're really well-known overseas and really well-liked. And it seems like they have really cleaned up their act. They also make Roswell power supplies, although Roswell usually gets the older platforms, where EVGA usually gets the newer platforms. And so I have not heard anything bad about EVGA power supplies, so I'm going to recommend them. This is going to be the first time I actually recommended a Superflower power supply. Um, so yeah, the reason why it's 600 watts is because I couldn't find a. I went for like 500 because I didn't want to go into the 400 range. I went to like 500, and there was like, close to $70 for an EVGA power supply down there. So I went up in wattage, because sometimes that's what you gotta do. Sometimes it's cheaper to buy more wattage. So I went up in wattage, and you get 600 watts for $50. That's a hell of a deal. Back in the day, I bought 650 watts for like close to $100. So this is a hell of a deal. And 600 watts with the cards now, the graphic cards that we have now, you're not going to run into a lot of problems. You're going to have a lot of power to spare with this. So you're going to have lots of upgrade room, not a lot of issues. Let's see. If you care about looks, I think there is some mustard and ketchup cables in there, but at this price point, we don't care about looks. We care about performance. For storage, is kind of, you have some options. Okay? Originally, I'm going to go with the cheap thing. I'm going to explain to this. We're going to go with the Western Digital Blue 1 terabyte, because it's only $50 and it's 1 terabyte, and it's Western Digital. And usually, I would either recommend Western Digital or I recommend Seagate. A lot of people are usually leaned away of Western Digital. I kind of prefer Seagate in the sense that they're usually priced lower, but since Western Digital Blue has been climbing up into the 1 terabyte and the 2 terabyte realm, actually been in 1 terabyte for a while, but they've been starting to climb into a 2 terabyte model, where Western Digital Black has been. The price has been kind of equal, so I'm recommending Western Digital for the first time in a long time, ever since IDE was a thing. So here we go. Get it. It's good. I like it, you know? Now some people are going to go, yeah, but it's a good deal, but it's a mechanical drive. This is the age of SSDs. And I go, yes, but this is kind of a budget build. You don't really want to go for the SSDs. I consider to be the upper, higher end stuff. And I go, and you would come back at me and go, but we need the SSD. And I go, okay, fine, I got you. You want an SSD? Fine, we'll get an SSD. Let's see here. You want an SSD? If you want to add an SSD, this is an SSD I would recommend. An ADATA Premier, 120 gigabyte. This is not enough to have your own SSD by itself, but this is an SSD where you can put your OS on it and a few games on it. And you will get that bonus for having an SSD with a mechanical drive. And you can sort of kind of squeeze it in there with the price. Just notice you're going to spend an extra $50 for this. Alright, so if you must have an SSD, I can recommend this SSD. And it's pretty fast too. It's 56 on the read, and 560 on the read, 56 to 530 on the write. Notice though. Oh wait, no. 410 on the right. Notice though that the read, yeah, you gotta look at this very closely because it changes based on how you set it up in the BIOS and everything. So, but still, even the lowest at 530, it's very tired, so I'm reading not quite right. But if you got even at the lowest, this is still faster than some of the earlier SSDs that like the one that I'm using even. So it's not bad. The right, my standard is at least 400 on the right, and you're golden. Where you really want the speed is you want to read as a speed, and you still got 500 plus. So that's kudos. So you're fine. You're golden with this. A lot of people ask about the controller. Honestly, I don't really care about the controller. I've used SandForce. I've used the newer Samsung stuff. I tried the Samsung controllers out. They're all good controllers. They all work. It really depends on how the manufacturer manufactured the SSD in the first place. So I don't even pay attention to the controller most of the time anymore. As long as it has trim, which almost every SSD has, your SSD is fine. So if you must have an SSD, I recommend this SSD. So back to our original list. For a case, we're going budget in. Nothing flashy, nothing fantastic. A deep, cool case. It's gonna be a little flimsy, but it's $30. It has basically everything you're gonna need in it. It has enough room for even the 12-inch graphic cards I can see. It has one fan in it. You can use that fan if you want. We're going to actually give you a package we're going to add a package into that where you have other fans in there if you want. USB 3.0, which will go nice with the motherboard we picked out. And yeah, 2.5, 3.5. Yeah, it's not flashy, but it will work. Okay. You got more vents on the side panel. So air cooling should be a okay thing. If you want liquid cooling, some of the liquid cooling might fit on the top. You might be able to put a single rad. You definitely should be able to put a single rad here, as long as it's 120 mount single rad there. So yeah, you got some options if you want to do liquid cooling if that's your thing. But moving on. This is the fans to talk about. Since I only saw one fan in the case, and I think that we should have at least 2 fans minimum. You should have an inlet and you should have an outlet at least. So in this case, you should be able to fill up those top vents with fans and maybe fill in the front and like the bottom with a fan. So most of the vents that matter should have a fan. You get a fan and you get a fan. Everybody gets a fan. And it's cheap. And I can testify that these fans are pretty damn silent. The most you're going to hear is whooshing. So, good stuff. Now, I include this, but you don't necessarily have to get this if you don't want to. Just understand if you don't get an optical drive, you're going to have to find some other way to get the OS onto your computer. Via USB, which they sell OSs with USBs now, huzzah, or you're going to have to make your own with some other computer, or you're going to have to do some black magic voodoo. So, if you don't want to do any of that stuff, you're going to have to do it. Now, you don't have to get this, you can get an external one, but I find the external ones, although a little bit more handy, they also cost a little bit more. So, I just always throw in one of these just for old time's sakes in all my builds anyway. Unless for some reason you're doing a build that just cannot have these in it. If that's the case, well, you'll have to improvise and you'll have to do what I said before, SS USB or external. So This is what it is. It's a Light-On. I like Light-On. I've used Light-On for years. Pretty much all the DVD burners are okay. They all cost about the same. It is what it is. So, not much to say there. Alright, so this brings it to the monitor. And this is all the fun stuff. We got the tower stuff done. This is the fun stuff. This is El Strippo also, but it's $120 on sale. It's $130 when not on sale. There are cheaper options on sale now if you want to check those out, but I can't guarantee those sales will last. So I went with one that's a little bit more realistic in its full price, and so there's a sale going on anyway. Now this is HDMI. It is a 1080, 60 hertz. It's good. You can use it for gaming. It's okay for gaming. It's not gonna lag out. You shouldn't have any ghosting issue with it. They do say the stand's a little shaky, but you know what? You need a monitor. You need it now. Damn it, give you a monitor. And we're trying to keep the cost down, so damn it. If you have a monitor around, you X this off. If you have one in mind, or you have a friend that's gonna hand you one, X this off. You know, if you got a better deal or a better idea, don't worry about it. But if you don't have one and you need one, this is something to get you somewhere. This is gonna get you somewhere. Next, again, OEM stuff. This is a bundle here, and it actually is cheaper to get this in a bundle than to get anything separate. So $20 normal, $15 right now, so you save $5. So yeah, I've used Logitech keyboards and mice before, and the weird thing is, the most comfortable, and I can't load, so we're just gonna look at this picture. The weird thing is, the most comfortable mouse I've ever used, besides the one I'm using right now, has been a Logitech OEM mouse. Not this one, but it has been a Logitech OEM mouse. And I can tell you that Logitech makes good accessories. I can't necessarily speak for their headsets because I haven't used their headsets, but I can vouch for the keyboards and mice. And they, for such cheap things, they last for a good long time. So this will get you started, and like tomorrow, this will get you somewhere until you get something better. Now the speakers. It took me a while to find these speakers. These are actually speakers that I've used for several years. Before I got these speakers, I was using the El Cheaps. They were like $5, $10 cheap, no name brand speakers that had tons of problems, static, some of them would go out, whatever. These are the first actually good speakers, and I can't tell you how good they actually sound. I actually did replace them about a year ago. It is actually really hard to find speakers that sound better than these sound. I cannot tell you how good these things actually sound, and the fact that they're full price only $25, I would pay that all day long for these speakers. They are good, and the fact they have a headphone jack in them is just a plus. Especially if you don't have a headphone jack in the front of your case, this is a plus. And you can just turn these off if you want to turn them off. They're just good speakers. I cannot recommend them enough. So, yeah. So as this were, for this whole build, you're looking at a total of $722 for just a tower. If you have the main accessories already, or you don't need them, for just a tower, it's $563. Definitely budget oriented. So now let's over at our alternative. If you want to go Intel, you need an Intel board, and we're going to use the current newest Intel, which is 1151 socket. There's a picture. This is an ASRock board. I have used ASRock boards a couple of times. I never really had an issue with them, and apparently they're pretty good. They're not the best, but they're pretty good. So I see no reason, and the fact that Intel uses so little power compared to AMD, I see no reason to go super insane with the heat sinks and the cooling. And I will mention that for all these different build setups, we're going to be using these stock heat sinks. Since this is a cheap build, we're just going to be using them stock setup. Oh, and by the way, before I go any further, um, let's go back to the enemy stuff. When you use this processor, the 6300, one thing I can say about the FX processors that I've learned with the 4300 and the A320 is go into the BIOS and disable power saving and running cool option. It'll actually make your processor more stable and run cooler. I don't know why, but it will. I had the problem with both processors. So if you do that, the stock heat sinks actually aren't that bad. Um, I was running my 4300. I was getting in the mid to upper 50 degrees Celsius. I was getting like 56, 57 degrees Celsius with everything on default, with turbo activated and everything. Turned off those settings in BIOS. I was getting like mid to upper 40s, like 46, 45 degrees Celsius. Turn off turbo, I was getting in the upper 30s, lower 40s. So there you go. So just a little warning up there. So going back to this, ASRock makes some pretty okay stuff. Um, yeah, it's a cheaper board because we don't need to worry about the power as we did with the AMD. So yeah, it has USB 3.0, has everything you're gonna need for a single card setup, has 4 DIMM slots. It's just a good basic starting board. Next we got the CPU. This is not an overclockable CPU, obviously, as we went with the board, because basic setup. Because some people like it. I point out some people just don't like to overclock their stuff. Some people just want to plug it in and just go. So I went with that because it's even cheaper to go with that. Um, excuse me. So yeah, we went with this. This is actually the lowest clock speed I would actually recommend going with at 3.2 gigahertz, and it's only 65 watts for GDP. I would say if it was going to get up, it'd get probably into the mid 70s under super high load like Prime 95. So not that much power at all. So you should be definitely fine. So yeah. And I'll point out that if you want to build a system for gaming, unless you want the overclocking version, this should be the best performing for your money CPU for gaming that you can get right now before Kaby Lake comes out. Because you don't really need an i7 for gaming. It helps a little bit, but for the most part, the i5 is going to give you the best performance you can actually get if you're willing to spend the money for it. I personally prefer to have more cores than that, but I'm not a pure just flat out gamer. I do more things with it. But if you are just a straight up gamer, this will be just fine for you. This will give you all the performance you really need with whatever graphic card you actually want without the bottleneck. So go ahead. And of course we need DDR4. So we got Mushkin Hack Enhanced Blackline 8GB 2x4. So Mushkin is good. I use them a handful of times. I never had any issue with them. And Blackline is good. And yeah, it's only again $45. So it's the same as the DDR3 stuff. So why not? It's good. Moving on to the graphic card. Excuse me. We moved out the Radeon card for an MSI GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. You could go for a 1050. That card is closer to around $100 or so, give or take. But it only had 2 gigabytes worth of memory. And as I said before, I really prefer to have just a little bit more than two. But again, we're only gaming at 1080p. So if you want that, you don't mind having a little bit less, you can go and pick that card up instead. Pick up the 1050 instead. I kind of feel better having a 1050 Ti. You're spending a little bit more money than the Radeon card, but if you want gigabyte, brain fart again. Sorry, I'm very tired. If you want a GeForce card, a NVIDIA card, this works. So this is actually the cheapest option, and MSI makes good cards. Haven't really had any problem with them whatsoever. I'm actually running MSI 390 right now on my main computer, so this is fine. If you're a kind of person that will only use NVIDIA cards and you will not touch the other card I mentioned, here you go. If you just will not touch this, they do have EVGA cards for if you want to spend a little bit more money. And of course, I already showed you the SSD. So with the Intel and NVIDIA build, the grand total is actually $850 with everything. For just the tower setup, it's $691. So that's the real thing that you kind of put out there is. I did not include the SSD in any of these builds, except for, I guess I did include it with the Intel NVIDIA build. You can subtract that if you want to, but the main thing that really added up was the i5 and a little bit more from the graphic card, but not really. So, what we did save money on the motherboard, because there's a lesser motherboard, we saved the same on the RAM. So, it's kind of fair trade. It's more or less the same computer. The only real difference is with the AMD build, you're basically trading off performance from the CPU for more cores. It's going to be better for more multi-thread things versus more instruction per clock, more single-thread application stuff with the i5. So that's kind of what you're doing. I'll leave it up to you about which one you think you would want, which one you think would work better for you, or maybe you would just go a completely different route and build $1,000 or $1,200 computer and bypass all of this. Maybe you'll build a i7 or 2011 socket computer. Oh, maybe you'll wait till Zen and do that, or Kaby Lake. Who knows? So tell me what you think about this build down below. If you like it, go ahead and click all the buttons down below, and be interested in see what you think about it. So until next time, peace.